The day humans stole the sky. True, astonishing, real history of flight BF4E. The sky belonged to US when gravity was Kyanji for nearly all of human existence. The sky was not a place. It was a mystery. It was a ceiling. Imagine standing on an open plain 5,000 years ago. No engines, no towers, no aircraft noise. Only wind, only birds. You look up, an eagle circles effortlessly, riding invisible currents of air. It does not struggle. It does not calculate. It simply belongs there. And you do not. For millennia, humanity walked, then sailed, then rode horses, but the sky remained untouched, an untamed kingdom, ruled by gravity and birds. But the dream of flight is older than civilization. The first. Darm nam reslambi. Before engines, long before mathematics could explain lift. Humans imagined wings. In ancient Greece, the myth of Icarus warned of flying too close to the sun. The story itself proves something astonishing. Even in myth, humans believed flight was possible. In China, kites soared into the air more than 2,000 years ago. They were not transportation, but they were proof that air could carry weight. By the Renaissance, imagination turned into sketches. The notebooks of Leonardo da Vinci reveal designs for flying machines centuries ahead of their time. He studied birds obsessively. He drew mechanical wings powered by human motion. He even designed a vertical lift device resembling a primitive helicopter. None of his machines flew, but something more important happened. Flight moved from mythology into engineering. Fire in the Escaut in 1783 in France, 2 paper manufacturers. The Montgolfier brothers launched the first successful hot air balloon. Humans rose into the sky. For the first time in history, people looked down on Earth from above. But balloons drifted helplessly with wind currents. They had no steering, no propulsion. They could rise but not truly fly. Europe celebrated. America observed. The United States was still young, but ambition was already forming. The man who sacrificed HIMC left by the late 19th century. Controlled gliding became the next frontier. A German engineer named Otto Lilienthal made over 2,000 glider flights between 1891 and 1896. He studied bird wings scientifically. He published data. He proved lift could be measured. Then he crashed. In 1896. He fell from the sky and later died from his injuries. His reported final words: sacrifices must be made. Across the Atlantic, 2 brothers in Dayton, Ohio, were reading his work. The bicycle Messi were not university professors. They were not wealthy. They ran a bicycle shop, Wilbur, right? And Orville Wright understood balance better than most engineers because bicycles demand balance. They believed previous inventors focused too much on engines. The real problem was control. How do you steer in the air? Birds twist their wings. The Wright brothers invented wing warping, a system that subtly twisted wings to control roll. They chose a remote location for testing. Kitty Hawk, strong winds, soft sand, isolation. For years, they tested gliders. They built their own wind tunnel to measure lift accurately. They corrected flawed aerodynamic data used by European scientists. They failed. They rebuilt. They tried again. Then they built something radical. A powered aircraft, 12 seconds, that changed the Autobahn. December 17, 1903. The engine roared to life. The machine was fragile, wood and fabric. 12 horsepower. The name, Wright Flyer. Orville lay prone on the lower wing. The propellers spun. The aircraft lifted 0.12 seconds. 120 feet. Gravity had been negotiated. That moment did not just create a machine. It created a new dimension of human civilization. America had entered the sky. The world doesn't believe it, strangely. The world barely noticed. Newspapers were skeptical. Some thought the claims were exaggerated. The Wright brothers struggled for years to secure contracts, but Europe began experimenting rapidly. France invested heavily in aviation development. By 1908, public demonstrations proved the airplane was real. The United States Army Signal Corps purchased a Wright aircraft in 1909. Military interest changed everything. War accelerates the sky when World War I erupted. Airplanes were still primitive. At first, they were reconnaissance tools, eyes in the sky. Then someone mounted a machine gun. Aerial combat was born. Dogfights filled European skies. Pilots became heroes. Aircraft speed doubled within years. The airplane evolved from fragile experiment into weapon. The sky became strategic territory. And America realized something crucial: air superiority equals power. The sky becomes a battlefield. Chapter 8, WHEN. America realized air power meant global POWR when the Wright brothers flew in 1903. They unlocked possibility, but it was war that unlocked urgency. During World War I, the airplane evolved faster than in any prior technological cycle in human history. In 1914, aircraft flew at roughly 70 to 80 miles per hour. By 1918, speeds exceeded 130 miles per hour. Aircraft became stronger, faster, deadlier. Europe led early production. France, Germany, and Britain manufactured thousands of planes. The United States entered the war late in 1917. At that time, America lagged behind European aviation engineering. But what America lacked in experience, it made up for in industrial capacity. Factories that once built farm equipment began assembling aircraft components. Automobile manufacturers converted lines to produce engines. Standardization improved reliability. By 1918, the United States had built over 15,000 aircraft. The economic implications were staggering. A new industrial sector had been born. Aviation was no longer an experiment. It was an industry. The aces and the myth of the SKY War created legends. Pilots were different from infantry. They fought alone, suspended above trenches, in open cockpits, wearing scarves and goggles. Figures like Eddie Rickenbacker became American heroes. Were romanticized in newspapers, but beneath the myth was brutal mathematics. Airplanes were fragile. Engines failed. Wings tore apart. Pilots froze at altitude. Casualty rates were extreme, yet young men volunteered anyway. Why? Because flight represented something psychologically powerful. To fly was to escape mud and trenches. To fly was to be modern. To fly was to represent the future. By the end of World War I, the United States understood something fundamental. Air power was not just tactical, it was symbolic. The man who predicted air diomianiansi after the war, one American officer became obsessed with a single idea: future wars would be won from the air. His name was Billy Mitchell. Mitchell argued that battleships were vulnerable to aircraft. In 1921, he dramatically demonstrated this by bombing captured German warships from the air. He was controversial. But he was right. His predictions shaped the eventual creation of the U.S. Air Force decades later. The sky was no longer secondary. It was strategic. The roaring 20s and civilian thousands of surplus military planes flooded the market. Barnstormers toured America, performing aerial stunts at county fairs. Crowds gathered in awe. Airplanes landed in cornfields. Pilots walked into towns offering rides for $5. It was chaotic, dangerous, unregulated, but it sparked public fascination. In 1927, a quiet, determined pilot named Charles Lindbergh changed everything. He flew solo across the Atlantic from New York to Paris in the spirit of St. Louis. 33 hours. No sleep. No co-pilot. No radar. America erupted in celebration. Lindbergh proved long-distance flight was possible. Suddenly, commercial aviation wasn't fantasy. It was inevitable. The birth of airlines in the late 1920s and early 1930s, commercial airlines began forming in the United States. Airmail contracts subsidized early routes. The government played a key role in establishing structured aviation infrastructure. Airports were built. Weather reporting improved. Navigation systems evolved. Companies that would become giants emerged, including what would later become American Airlines, United Airlines, and Delta. Aircraft design advanced from fragile wood and fabric biplanes to metal monoplanes. Then came the Douglas DC-3 in 1935. The DC-3 was revolutionary. It was reliable. It was profitable. For the first time, airlines could make money carrying passengers instead of relying primarily on mail. Aviation entered the consumer economy. When the world went to war, and then came World War II. This war would transform aviation beyond recognition. The scale was unprecedented. The United States produced over 300,000 military aircraft during World War II. Factories ran 24 hours a day. Women entered the workforce as Rosie the Riveters, building bombers and fighters. Aircraft like the B-17 Flying Fortress, the P-51 Mustang, and the B-29 Superfortress redefined air warfare. Strategic bombing campaigns reshaped military doctrine. The atomic bomb was delivered by a B-29 named Enola Gay. Air power had become civilization-altering. By 1940, flight was no longer new. It was decisive. The jet age arrives during World War II. Engineers developed a radical new propulsion system, the jet engine. Instead of spinning propellers, jets compressed air and ignited fuel to produce thrust. After the war, jet technology entered civilian life. In 1958, the Boeing 707 began commercial jet service in the United States. Transatlantic travel time dropped dramatically. Flying was no longer for the wealthy elite alone. It became middle transportation. The jet age had begun. Airports expanded massively. Runways lengthened. Air traffic control systems modernized. The economic impact was enormous. Tourism exploded. International business accelerated. The world shrank. The Cold War and supersonic AMBIO. When the Cold War turned the sky into a chessboard, fighter jets exceeded the speed of
industry, innovation, and the making of an American sky and Pirathy company that built the modern SKY. The Wright Brothers proved flight was possible. One company proved it could scale. That company was Boeing, founded in 1916 by William Boeing in Seattle. The company began modestly, building seaplanes for the U.S. Navy. But what separated Boeing from many early competitors was vision. Boeing did not just want to build airplanes, it wanted to build systems, manufacturing systems, supply chains, engineering processes, and global logistics networks. During World War II, Boeing became synonymous with strategic bombers. The B-17 and later B-29 were marvels of industrial coordination. Thousands of workers, engineers, and suppliers collaborated across states by the end of World War II. United States possessed not only the most powerful Air Force in the world, it possessed the most advanced aerospace industry. That industrial base would define the second half of the 20th century, the jumbo jet that changed human MOV-MNT in the 1960s. Air travel was growing rapidly, but tickets were still expensive. Flying was common, but not universal. Then Boeing gambled on something audacious, an airplane twice the size of anything that existed. The result was the Boeing 747, nicknamed the Queen of the Skies. The 747 could carry over 400 passengers, more than double previous aircraft. When it entered service in 1970, critics doubted airlines could fill it. They were wrong. The 747 made long-haul travel dramatically more affordable. Economies of scale lowered ticket prices. Middle-class families began vacationing overseas. Tourism exploded. International business accelerated. Globalization intensified in many ways. The 747 did not just carry passengers, it carried globalization itself. Deregulation and the free market. SKY 1978. A quiet but revolutionary law passed in the United States. The Airline Deregulation Act. Before deregulation, airline routes and fares were tightly controlled by the government. Prices were stable, but competition was limited. Deregulation opened the market. New airlines entered, ticket prices dropped, hub, dash, and spoke networks emerged. Air travel became dramatically more accessible to average Americans. But competition also brought volatility. Airlines merged. Some collapsed. Efficiency became survival. The airline industry transformed into one of the most like Moga, like look at this, like look at this. And we all know I've been a loosed court. And we all know I've been exploring that. I've been exploring that path. While oculity. Airlines merge. Mogon/guibilitize, Mogash. Sawiding, convuti. Accordi convuti. With solide why we recive. Corded danting why we psyq with competitive sectors in the U.S. economy. Airports became economic ecosystems supporting hospitality, retail, logistics, and employment. Aviation was no longer just transportation, it was infrastructure. The rise of the ASAOMICOPTR while fixed-wing aircraft dominated long-distance travel. A different type of flight was evolving: vertical flight. The helicopter solved a different problem: landing anywhere. During the Vietnam War, helicopters became symbols of mobility and evacuation. Medevac missions saved thousands of lives done in civilian life. Helicopters transformed emergency medicine, search and rescue, offshore oil operations, and news broadcasting. Urban skylines gained HELIPADS. Medical helicopters shortened trauma response. Times. Flight was no longer confined to airports. It could reach rooftops, stealth, and the invisible SK-wide during the Cold War. Radar technology improved dramatically. Aircraft could be detected from long distances. The response: make planes invisible. The United States developed stealth technology. Aircraft shaped and coded to minimize radar reflection. When the F-117 Nighthawk was revealed, it looked like something from science fiction. Then came the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber. During the Gulf War in 1991, stealth aircraft struck targets with unprecedented precision while avoiding detection. Air power had evolved again. Now, was not just speed or altitude that mattered, it was invisibility. The globalization eon by the late 20th century. Aviation powered the global economy. Cargo aircraft flew overnight routes connecting Asia, Europe, and North America. Just-in-time supply chains depended on air freight. Electronics assembled in Asia reached American consumers within days. Perishable goods crossed oceans overnight. Companies like FedEx and UPS built empires on air logistics. Air cargo became the circulatory system of global trade. Without aviation, modern e-commerce would collapse. The internet moves information. Airplanes move everything else. Chapter 22. The Shock of September 11th. On September 11th, 2001, aviation faced its darkest day. Commercial airplanes were weaponized in coordinated attacks. On American soil, the psychological impact was enormous. Airspace closed nationwide, security transformed overnight. The Transportation Security Administration (TSA) was created. Cockpit doors were reinforced. Screening intensified. The industry faced economic shock, but it adapted. Aviation proved resilient. Flight resumed and security became permanently integrated into air travel. Drones. The unmanned Arrivo Ulanine, the early 21st century. A new type of aircraft emerged: unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, commonly called drones. Initially military-focused, drones provided reconnaissance without risking pilots. Then civilian applications exploded: agriculture. Infrastructure inspection, photography. Disaster response, delivery, testing. The sky was no longer occupied only by pilots. Autonomous systems entered the airspace. Flight had become algorithmic. The dream of electric FLAGHT. Now aviation faces a new challenge: sustainability. Jet fuel powers global mobility, but it produces emissions. Engineers are developing electric aircraft, hybrid systems, and sustainable aviation fuels. Startups are building electric vertical takeoff aircraft, EVTOLs, for urban air mobility. The vision: air taxis. Quiet. Autonomous. Carbon light. Cities like Los Angeles and Miami are already planning infrastructure. The next aviation revolution may not be louder or faster, it may be cleaner. Hypersonic. TOMOROWRO Tour IPHR OHR ITO RY Toro ITO IPHRO. If you're using like a scanner app and it's like you're on ITR ATH, like a lice. Like, look at this and we'll love. Look at this. And we all know I've sinned. I tell us what we MYIB unChristonic EOMHE. I call I what uncrisses? I call it up to a lot. I call it call-eyes can I do you it we call-I side my con-lie to call I with suf can call-I I call I kai ke sai kai call like you can you I side to go I need you to cause kai di such a wiki you I ki I if these if they aircraft capable of flying at Mach 5 and beyond. New York to Tokyo in 2 hours. Suborbital passenger travel. Reusable. Spock. Private companies are partnering with government agencies to test next-generation propulsion. The boundary between aviation and space is blurring. The sky is no longer the limit. It is the beginning. We are still expanding this epic narrative. So far, we have covered the Wright Brothers' World War's jet engines, Boeing's dominance, V-747, and globalization deregulation helicopters, stealth cargo logistics 9/11s, transformation, drones electric, and hypersonic future, the economics of the sky, how aviation built the modern American superpower. If Part 1 was about invention and war, Part 2 is about scale. Because flight did not merely change transportation, it rewired the American economy. When airports became cities in the early 1900s, airfields were grass strips outside towns. Today, major U.S. airports are economic ecosystems. Airports like Hartsfield, Jackson Atlanta International move over 100 million passengers annually. Entire metropolitan economies orbit around them. Airports generate direct employment pilots, mechanics, air traffic controllers, indirect employment hotels, restaurants, ride services induced economic growth. Business relocation, tourism. In many states, aviation contributes billions to GDP in Texas. Aerospace manufacturing supports thousands of jobs. In Washington state, Boeing anchors regional industry. Airports are no longer transport hubs. They are economic engines. Military aviation. The cost of dominance since World War II. The United States has maintained unmatched air superiority. That dominance is expensive. Modern fighter jets like the F-35 cost tens of millions per unit. Stealth bombers cost billions in development. But air superiority offers strategic leverage. Rapid global force projection, precision strike capability, deterrence through technological superiority. The U.S. Air Force operates hundreds of bases worldwide. Aircraft carriers extend aviation into oceans. Control of the sky equals control of the battlefield. And control of the battlefield influences geopolitics. The Global Alliance Network, commercial aviation created alliances. That mere political diplomacy. Airlines form global networks, sharing routes, coordinating schedules, and optimizing passenger flow. An American passenger can book a single ticket connecting multiple continents through airline partnerships. This connectivity reinforces economic influence. Business executives cross oceans in hours. Supply chains remain agile. Capital flows follow flight paths. The airplane became an instrument of globalization. The supply chain that never sleeps. Consider this. Every night, cargo aircraft lift off from Asia carrying electronics, pharmaceuticals, and industrial components. By morning, those goods are in Memphis, Louisville, Anchorage, Los Angeles. Air cargo enables same-day delivery, organ transplants, emergency disaster relief, critical military resupply without aviation. Modern logistics collapses. The internet created digital speed. Aviation created physical speed. Together, they define 21st century commerce. Pandemic shock and resilience in 2020. Global aviation nearly stopped. Flights were grounded, airports were empty, passenger traffic collapsed. The COVID-19 pandemic tested aviation's resilience more than any event since 9/11's. But cargo. Flights surged. Medical supplies moved by air. Vaccines crossed continents within years. Passenger demand rebounded. History proved something again. Aviation is not optional. It is structural.
The machines of the modern sky, types of aircraft and their roles. The world of flight today is not one category. It is an ecosystem of machines. Commercial airliners, modern airliners are engineering marvels. Long-haul aircraft like the 787 Dreamliner use composite materials, reducing weight and improving fuel efficiency. Cabins are pressurized, climate-controlled, digitally monitored. These aircraft can fly over 8,000 nautical miles non-stop. They connect continents overnight. Private and business jets, corporate aviation serves time-sensitive executives. Private jets allow direct routing, bypassing commercial hubs. They support industries where time equals money, though controversial in emissions debates. They remain central to certain economic sectors. Helicopters from military medevac to urban emergency rescue. Helicopters provide vertical mobility. They are indispensable in offshore oil operations, mountain rescue, wildfire monitoring, news coverage. Unlike fixed-wing aircraft, helicopters operate in constrained environments. They bring flight into cities. Fighter jets and air superiority. Modern fighter aircraft exceed Mach 2. They integrate radar, electronic warfare, AI-assisted targeting, and stealth shaping. Air combat is no longer visual dogfights, it is data warfare. Who sees first? Wins first. Air dominance remains central to U.S. defense doctrine. Drones and autonomous flight, unmanned systems are reshaping aviation. Military drones conduct surveillance for hours without pilot fatigue. Civilian drones map terrain, inspect bridges, and capture film footage. Autonomy is expanding. Artificial intelligence is entering the cockpit. The pilot may one day become optional. Space planes and the edge of atmosphere. Reusable rockets and experimental spaceplanes blur the boundary between aviation and spaceflight. Suborbital passenger transport is being researched. The next frontier may reduce intercontinental travel to under 2 hours. The sky is merging with space. The future, when flight becomes invisible, the next revolution in aviation may not look dramatic. It may be quiet, electric, autonomous, integrated into cities. Electric air taxis, startups across America are developing eVTOL aircraft, electric vertical takeoff vehicles, EPROMs, reduced noise, lower emissions, urban congestion relief. Cities are testing infrastructure for rooftop If successful, urban air mobility could redefine commuting. Sustainable aviation fuels to address climate concerns. Airlines are investing in sustainable aviation fuels, SAF. These fuels reduce life cycle emissions. Hydrogen propulsion is being researched. The challenge is scale and infrastructure. The future of aviation must balance growth with responsibility. Hypersonic and beyond research into hypersonic aircraft could allow Mach 5 travel. New York to London in under 2 hours. Tokyo to Los Angeles before sunrise. Military applications are advancing first. Commercial use may follow decades later. The race continues. Final conclusion. When the sky became human for most of history, the sky was untouchable. It belonged to storms, to birds, to gods. Humans walked. We sailed. We built roads and railways. But the sky remained above us, distant, indifferent, unreachable, until a cold December morning in 1903 at Kitty Hawk. Two brothers, Orville Wright and Wilbur Wright, did not just build a machine. They altered the trajectory of civilization. 12 seconds of powered flight became 12 decades of transformation. And what followed was not merely technological progress, it was a restructuring of the human world. Flight reshaped distance before aviation. Crossing the Atlantic took weeks. Wars were limited by geography. Business expansion was slow. Families were separated by oceans. After aviation, a business deal in New York could be signed in London within 24 hours. Humanitarian aid could reach disaster zones in hours. Soldiers could deploy across continents overnight. Tourism became global. The airplane did not shrink the planet physically. It shrank it psychologically. Distance stopped meaning isolation. Flight reshaped war during World War I. The airplane was experimental. By World War II, it was decisive. During the Cold War, it became deterrence. Air superiority became central to U.S. defense doctrine. Control of the sky meant control of the battlefield. From strategic bombers to stealth fighters, aviation redefined power projection. The United States did not merely participate in the age of flight. It led it. Flight reshaped the economy. Aviation became one of the pillars of the American economy. Airports evolved into economic megastructures. Manufacturers like Boeing became global industrial symbols. Millions of jobs, engineers, mechanics, pilots, logistics planners depend on the aviation ecosystem. Air cargo fuels e-commerce, perishable goods cross continents overnight. Supply chains rely on flight-like arteries, rely on blood flow. Without aviation, globalization would stall. Flight reshaped identity. There is something uniquely American about aviation history. It began not in royal laboratories or government palaces, but in a bicycle shop. The Wright brothers were not aristocrats. They were tinkerers, inventors, self-taught engineers. Their success reflects a broader American pattern: curiosity plus persistence plus risk. That formula carried the nation from wooden gliders to supersonic jets, from cloth wings to stealth bombers, from propellers to spacecraft. The sky today, aviation is so normal we barely notice it. Thousands of aircraft are airborne at any given moment. Commercial jets glide at 35,000 feet. Fighter aircraft patrol invisible borders. Helicopters rescue patients from highways. Drones map farmland. Cargo planes move life-saving medicine overnight. Every takeoff repeats the same quiet miracle. Defiance of gravity. The sky tomorrow. The future of aviation is already unfolding. Electric propulsion systems are being tested. Sustainable aviation fuels are expanding. Autonomous air taxis are under development. Hypersonic research aims to reduce intercontinental travel to mere hours. The line between aviation and space is thinning. One day, suborbital passenger routes may be as normal as flights, and yet the core challenge remains the same one faced in 1903. How do we balance innovation with responsibility? How do we expand mobility while protecting the planet? How do we integrate automation without losing human oversight? The next chapter will demand wisdom, not just speed. The final reflection: look up tonight. Somewhere above you, a metal aircraft weighing hundreds of thousands of pounds is crossing the sky at nearly 600 miles per hour. Inside our families, engineers, students, soldiers, dreamers, they eat dinner, they watch movies, they sleep. They barely think about the physics holding them aloft. But beneath them is a century of sacrifice, experimentation, industrial ambition, and bold imagination. From the fragile wooden frame of the Wright Flyer to stealth bombers and electric prototypes, from 12 seconds to global infrastructure, humanity did not just learn to fly, we reorganized civilization around flight. The sky is no longer a boundary, it is a highway. And as long as humans look upward with curiosity, the story of aviation will continue. Because the most astonishing truth of all is this: we were never meant to fly, and yet we do.